went in with the mindset of let's make a beautiful wedding, a beautiful night for the chassan and kala, and let's do it within our means.
What it cost?
The whole package is $23,000 all in, both sides. So there's plenty of food to go around. The big difference is that people are focusing on the chassan and kala and the wedding instead of focusing on more sushi and more carving stations. The amount of people that are talking about your simcha afterwards, if they're talking about the sushi at the simcha, you went over the top. Because you're not a restaurant, you're a chasana. I like sushi, don't get me wrong, but I'm not taking my 500 closest friends out to dinner. I don't think it's fair to raise a child a certain way with everything up there spending-wise, for whether it's bas mitzvah, whether it's bar mitzvah, whether it's vacations, and then when it comes to the wedding, we got to stop right there. Now we have a new policy, and now we don't overspend.
For our non-Jewish listeners, how much do you think it costs to make an Orthodox Jewish wedding? Tell me, $20,000, $40,000, maybe over $65,000. Well, you might be surprised to learn that in some circles, it's completely normal to spend $120,000 to $130,000 on a single wedding. And to our From audience, to our Orthodox Jewish listeners who are fed up with the pressure to make a basic wedding that ends up feeling more like a lavish, expensive production, we're talking about, right, spending on a 3 to 4 hour event, money that could easily be a down payment on a house. This episode is a must watch. Are we going to solve the entire challenge in one episode? Actually, yes. And I'm serious. You might disagree, and that's okay. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear everything there is to know in your mind. But enough from me. Let's get to the episode. Welcome to an episode of Kosher Money where we're going to talk about the price of weddings. Jewish, as we call them, simchos. We're here with mayergold of Rockaway, New York. Mayer has made simchos, made weddings, and he shared some really interesting thoughts with me. And I said, hey, we got to do an episode. So before we get into it, Mayer, grew up in Rockaway. Tell us a little bit about your background.
I grew up in Brooklyn. I'm married to Mimi from Silver Spring, and we ended up in Rockaway 32 years ago.
Okay, so you've been here for a while. How many weddings have you made?
Baruch Hashem, we just made our fifth wedding.
Fifth wedding. So what was different about this wedding? And then we'll get into what the other weddings cost and things like that.
Okay, so this wedding, it was actually not so different from our other weddings. It was similar in that we, went in with the mindset of let's make a beautiful wedding, a beautiful night for the chassan and kala, and let's do it within our means.
What it cost?
So we made our wedding in a terrace Matalea, which is Manhattan Beach Jewish Center. Beautiful wedding. It's a Takana chasana. The whole package is $23,000 all in, both sides.
So each side doesn't have to pay $23,000.
No, it's $23,000 all in. Food, music, photography, flowers, everything. The entire night is $23,000.
So someone hearing that is rolling their eyes. It's impossible. You probably got 3 carrots, a small piece of chicken, and people left the wedding thinking, wow, so sad.
The truth is the exact opposite, because actually, when the wedding was over, there's like trays of food that they make extra that was not even eaten. So there's plenty of food to go around. The big difference is that people are focusing on the chassan and kala and the wedding instead of focusing on more sushi and more, carving stations and everything else, which is great. I love them. But the people that actually were there for the chassan and kala, or maybe the parents or whoever they were there for, but as opposed to waiting online for food. So actually it was fantastic. The place is beautiful. The service was absolutely fantastic. Music was fantastic. We had a musician, two-piece musician and a singer. Photography was great. Flowers were, I don't know if they existed, but they were great.
You don't even know.
I don't even know. Right. I can tell you one thing. One good thing about Terrace Matalea is that you're not going to have any add-ons. This is what it is. But you could bring wine.
Wine.
So we discussed bringing wine or not, and we ended up bringing wine, and most of the wine came back to my house afterwards because no one drank it.
And the leftovers you take for Shabbos Sheva Brachas?
No, it didn't work out that way, but right. Yeah, theoretically, yeah. The wine was Shabbos Sheva Brachas, yeah. Part of making a wedding, the way we made a wedding, is that it has to run on time, it has to be able to schedule. I guess I thought about afterwards that every time you go and you run past the time, you have overtime for the photographer, musician, kitchen staff, the whole everything has to run with a very tight schedule. So Baruch Hashem, it worked very well and not stressful, just schedule. And we stuck to the schedule. Masada Kedushin, Chuppah started on time. The chassan kala didn't spend, an hour and a half taking chassan kala pictures afterwards. They served the main before the first dance. Everyone got a main. It came to, let's say, seating. So you have 350 seats. There were much more than 350 people at the wedding, but they're not all there at the same time. Mm-hmm. So people who came in at 10:30 just used someone else's seat for dessert, and everyone was thrilled. So all these type of things that just add on to cost of a wedding that are really not necessary. It was fantastic. And many, many people came over to both my wife and myself last 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And they just say, what a beautiful chasana. First of all, it was local. It ran on time. It was efficient. It was great. It was beautiful. I wish and few people told me,
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could make a chasana like that. I'm like, well, why don't you? And then the conversation died right there because there's not really a good reason, very often.
I said before 3 pieces of carrots and a small piece of chicken. That could be a great chasana as well. I don't mean to judge. What would that wedding have cost in another hall without, the strict guidelines of what it entails? What have your other weddings cost?
So it's actually a second wedding in this hall. Okay. One of our weddings we made, our mechutanim is a caterer. So that was really, them doing what they do fantastic, and they're wonderful, fantastic mechutanim and wonderful people. And one wedding was in Lakewood, also a similar type wedding. And one of them was in Brooklyn. Our first wedding was in Brooklyn. 3 weeks ago's wedding, I'm going to guess, not at the Takana chasana, is no less than $50,000. Because even the food part, the whole part, it's got to be at least, 75% more.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to have a one-man band. You're going to have a couple piece orchestra, and you're not going to have a one-man photographer. You're going to have a whole team or maybe 2 teams and fresh flowers and everything else that goes along with that. And once you do all that, that just tacks on another 10, 20 grand onto your wedding.
So the other weddings you've made, where do you think costs started creeping up without you realizing? You mentioned the flowers. What else?
No, so Baruch Hashem, we never had that. We never had that.
Where could it have?
The first wedding we made was our first daughter about 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago ish. And I remember at the time, a friend of mine had just made a chasana. And he made it in a Teres Avram, Alav Shalom, which doesn't exist anymore, a fantastic wedding hall in Williamsburg. And I remember saying to him, you have a contact over there. And he said to me, he obviously knew me very well, and he said, I'll get you a contact, but you may want to look at a wedding hall in your tax bracket. Make sure it's your tax bracket before you go there.
How'd that make you feel?
Good question. At the moment, it made me feel not so good. But about a minute later, I said, he's absolutely right. Let me find out what the costs are, but it might not be for me. And sure enough, it wasn't for me. And we decided that, we ended up going to Brooklyn, and we went to Teres Chinka, and they did a fantastic job, and we were thrilled. And I think that wedding was about $21,000. Not all in. On top of that is
$21,000.
That was just
both sides.
No, it was $21,000 for the hall and the catering and everything else. I think it was 21. Then on top of that is photographer, music, flowers, everything else. Now, you asked the question before about where this cost could run away. So obviously, you could add on, if you're doing a wedding, not Takana, you could add on whatever you want. So by Teres Chinka, they were terrific people, great job. I highly recommend the hall. The question was, do you want extra valet? You want bathroom attendants? You want extra this, extra that? The answer for everything was no. She's like, you're the easiest client I ever had in my life. I'm like, it's very simple. You have good food, right? She actually said to me, what do you want? You want to pick out what you want to serve? I said, well, what's the most popular items? That's what I want to serve. Things that nobody wants, I don't want either. And that was it. Conversation was over. It was great. Fantastic. The chutanim, Baruch Hashem was really worked out very, very well.
I would imagine you need 2 to tango,
right,
in the sense that the other side has to be amenable to
so you need 2 to tango, 100%. And you also need to have 2 people that both sides have to both realize that not every time are both mechutanim going to be on the same, the same financial situation. But part of being healthy is realizing that who you are, who they are, and what we have to do. So if I want to make a chasana on a certain level and my mechutan either doesn't want to or can't, we have to meet somewhere in the middle, or have to realize, they'll chip in what they could chip in, and I got to cover the rest. I can't expect them to live up to my standard, knowing that, and that's something that's very, very important. Going in.
Meaning, if the other side said to you, "That's really great, but we can't afford it. If you want to go ahead with it, are you able to cover the full amount of valet?" Right? Let's use that as an example. That's not disrespectful. That's just someone being honest, and you would want to see that level of transparency, right?
Right. So I actually I have a friend of ours that actually made a chasana. It was very close to one of our chasanas, and he had this exact situation where he made a chasana way more expensive than he wanted to, because the chatanim would not budge on the type of chasana that they wanted, and he was not going to fight with them. And the kids are engaged, and they're going to be great together. And fighting never works, because once you start fighting with chatanim, it always trickles down to the kids. And if you want your kids to have a bad marriage, fight with chatanim. It's guaranteed going to happen. So he sort of gave in and spent a good amount of money more than he wanted to. Actually, I think he could afford it, but just it wasn't his mindset. He had no reason to. He was very happy not to, but they insisted on doing it that way, and that's what he did. So he sort of gave in to them and then ended up in a much more expensive chasana that nobody really needed.
What would have happened had he said, listen, I really don't want to spend that much. If you want to do A, B, and C, are you able to cover that? Would they have taken offense of some sort to that?
Good question. I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping not, but
Right.
it's hard to know. I could tell you that with our last chasana we made, we met the Mechutanim the first time, and Faye, don't kill me for saying this. If you're watching or listening to this, hope you are. I remember saying it was their first chasana that they were making. It was Baruch Hashem, our fifth chasana. And she's like, what do we do? I said, well, the first thing you have to be is be normal. She says, what do you mean? I said, well, I don't know. I don't know what your financial situation is, but I imagine you buy my daughter a ring. She said, of course I'll buy your daughter a ring. I said, well, then before you talk to the guy or before you go into the store, make up in your mind how much you're going to spend. And that's what you're spending. Because you can always spend more. I said, I'm going to buy your son a watch and a shas and everything else that goes along with chasna and kala at some point. But you have to be realistic. This is what we're spending. This is what we could afford. This is what we're doing. And be very, very strong about it. You're buying a leichter, you can spend leichter $1,000 or $10,000. Where are you? Where's your daughter-in-law holding? And make sure that's what you're doing. And don't go crazy.
How important in the shidduchim phase before you go out in the evaluation, hey, is this family, is this son, potential son-in-law, potential daughter-in-law for me, how much of that comes into the equation of the finances, but not the finances, because that really doesn't matter, but more about their appetite for, looking at how their previous weddings were, and do you have to be somewhat compatible on that front, or that really didn't come into the equation?
It's funny you ask. It worked out that way. It never really came into the equation. I think the bigger conversation is what type of people are they in terms of their midos. Because you could have someone who could afford a $250,000 wedding and says, I could afford it easily. I don't need to do it. My mechutanim can't afford it or don't want it. I'm happy to do what they want. I'm happy. They say a famous story. I mean, I've heard it about multiple gedolim. Shmuel Kamenetsky should be well for one, and many other ones. And when they came to the chasna and kala, I think on one chasana, it was the two parents walked down the chasna, two parents walked down the kala. And then at different chasna he made, it was two fathers walked down the chasna, two mothers walked down the kala. And one of his talmidim asked him, what's the Rosh Yeshiva's minhag?
Well, they alternated between the two.
Yeah, so he said, what's the Rosh Yeshiva's minhag? Did the parents walk down the chasna and kala, or do you do the two men and the two women? He said, whatever the mechutanim want, is that what I do? So basically,
that's his minhag.
If that's your mindset, so then regardless of your financial situation, you figure it out. So that has to be the mindset going into anything. We haven't done a lot of research into our mechutanim, definitely not from a financial perspective. The main thing is that they have a healthy home and they're healthy and quote unquote normal. And once that happens, everything else sort of falls into place.
Because you're normal, right?
Ish.
Same. That's why we get along so well. Mayor's a friend for many years. When you're making a bar mitzvah, you don't have another side to this unless in-laws are involved, but there's no mechutanim, right? For a bar mitzvah, someone messaged me. He says, don't use my name. I made a bar mitzvah 2 years ago, cost me in total $75,000. I'm so embarrassed.
I'm so sorry for him. So when we made our
He's doing tshuva.
Right. He should do tshuva. It's funny.
Well, that's the first part of tshuva.
Right.
Recognizing. And verbalizing.
Fantastic. Excellent. Did he text it or he verbalized it? He should say it in a voice
both.
note.
He does. Right. He doesn't stop messaging me. Good guy. Love you.
I could tell you our first bar mitzvah we made, it was a big deal. It was our first big simcha. Our son now is 30. I'm going to say 32. How old are you? Let's say 31, 32. So it was.
Isn't that a lie? He can't call in.
Good.
Do you want to call in show? We can do that.
I want to phone a friend. It was a good number of years ago. It was our first big simcha. And BBY in Far Rockaway it was a brand new building with a brand new catering hall that Mimi had raised a lot of money for in memory of the Chama Holman. And basically, Rabbi Hiller, who was the head of BBY at the time, said you could have the room for free. We would never rented the room, but we just raised all the money to dedicate the room, and we got the room for free. And we ended up and he was making a scene Mishnais. There was a lot going on in that one time. And it was our first simcha. So we made, for us, a fancy bar mitzvah. Basically, we invited immediate family, like siblings, grandparents, siblings, whatever, for like a dinner. And then we invited friends for dessert. And his class, obviously. And that was the whole thing. It was not, by today's standards, it didn't exist. It was nothing. And I remember the next day, someone called Mimi up and said, the centerpieces were so beautiful. I can't get over there. It was so gorgeous. So Mimi called me up and says, what were the centerpieces? I said, remember we went to Michael's and we bought those candles, they're like those tall wax candles, they're like tall, shorter and shorter. We had each table had 3 of them. Total cost maybe $2.39 for all 3 candles. And at that point, I remember saying...
And he had a Groupon.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Right.
I remember saying to myself and to Mimi, it just shows nobody knows and nobody cares. Because we could have easily spent, $200 on each centerpiece and it would have been the same comment. Or had no centerpieces, it would have been the same comment. But these were literally $2.39, maybe $3.39 per table. And they were beautiful.
When you say nobody cares, you're leading me on to think that you think most people do it because of somebody else or what they think people's expectations are. Is that right?
I think in general, people think that people think about them. But I think in general in life, most people don't care. Like you could have someone going out there, maybe buying the most expensive suit or the most expensive car, and he meets someone and they don't remember anything about the suit or the car. They just know that they met the guy. Maybe some people will, some people won't, but not enough people will remember that it's really worth it.
They just remember he's a sweet, nice guy.
Either he is or, right, if he is, assuming he is, and if he's not, he's not. But you're not going to change that. But definitely the amount of people that are talking about your simcha afterwards, if they're talking about the sushi at the simcha, you went over the top, because you're not a restaurant. You're a chasana. I like sushi, don't get me wrong, but I'm not taking my 500 closest friends out to dinner.
We'll be right back to this week's episode, but before I tell you about this next company, the word kesem in Hebrew means magic. Got it? Okay, let's do this ad. If you're looking to grow your business with a team that knows how to make things happen, let me tell you about Kesem Media. Magic Media. I've known Yehudis from Kesem Media for nearly a decade, and I've seen firsthand how sharp and results-driven she is. She and her sister Menucha run Kesem Media. They're a dynamic duo, and they bring something special to every project. Who are they? Well, Menucha's background, she's a private investigator and an IDF soldier, which means she's trained to find the right people. And now she finds the right ones for your brand. Yehudis has spent almost 10 years mastering marketing strategies that go way beyond impressions and likes. They deliver leads, sales, and real growth. You're liking what you're hearing? I'm going to continue. Together, they've helped brands of all kinds, CPG, SaaS, e-commerce, nonprofits, and they help them reach the right audience at the right time. They don't waste your time with fluff. They give you clear strategy, smart execution, and real results that feel almost like magic. Get it? If you're serious about growing your business and want people who genuinely care about your success, connect with Yehudis at Kesem Media. You can reach out to her at yehudis@kesem.media. We'll put a link and the email address in the show notes, or visit www.kesem.media to learn more. That's Kesem Media, where strategy meets results. Magic. We'll be right back to this week's episode, which is brought to you in part by BitBean. They used to say that on Sesame Street, which is brought to you in part by Reading Rainbow. I think that's another show. Anyways, BitBean, right? The software development company. They create world-class software. You know them. I've told you about them. If it's your first time hearing about them, just think custom software that makes businesses run better. And they're trusted by major enterprises, right? Major enterprises need things done right, and they turn to BitBean. But here's what you don't know. Thanks to the breakthroughs in AI, and I know you've heard of AI, but thanks to the breakthroughs, BitBean now delivers that same premium experience, which is expert engineers, thoughtful design, real scalability at a fraction of the price. They're not just using AI like you to cut corners. BitBean built a proprietary research-backed framework that enhances every stage of development with 5 times faster delivery and 0 compromise on quality. It's a lot of words, I get it, but think about it this way. If you want to see how AI can elevate your next project, visit bitbean.com or email them at info@bitbean.com. And if you're serious, they might even invite you to their office, which is awesome. We're going to go down there. You'll get a coffee, but more than that, you'll get a mind-blowing demo. Tell them Kosher Money sent you. BitBean, premium software without the premium price. Links in the show notes. Did you like the COVID weddings when there were immediate family members, or that's too few and you want your 100 closest friends?
So I think there was something very, very real about it, very intimate about it. I had a nephew who got married. Actually, he got married upstate in the Raleigh Hotel, and they're making, I think, 75 men, 75 women. It was very nice, very cute. I have a niece who got married. It was terrible. It was outdoors. It was like no one there. Cousin's father wasn't well. So it was like sort of in between. Some people liked it, some people didn't like it. We were talking last Shabbos. One of my kids brought up that one of their friends had one of these COVID weddings and they still never got over it. All their friends had nicer weddings. So it's certainly a mindset. I don't know if I think that COVID weddings is the way to go. I think the way to go is to change people's mindsets on an individual basis. I don't think the answer is, let's make COVID weddings with 10 people. Theoretically, it's great. Realistically, I mean, if you think about it, if you're one of 6 kids and your wife's one of 6 kids and you have a bunch of married nieces and nephews and Baruch Hashem, people are getting married, then you have parents and grandparents and close uncles and aunts. And even without going too far outside the circle, it's 150 people.
Yeah, I happen to like that.
Right.
Plus, your 10 closest family friends. Right.
So our last wedding, like I said, there was 250 seats at the dinner. And we basically made the cheshbon that we invited all, obviously, our siblings and, nieces and nephews and married nieces and nephews, but we didn't invite our second and third and fourth and 50th cousin. They didn't get an invitation to dinner. And certainly, casual acquaintances in shul, it was very nice to invite the entire shul for dinner. But I have a shul with, 150 members, so most of them don't want to come.
Right.
And actually a bunch of people showed up to the wedding. And I remember I never invited them, but I was happy that they came. Because why not?
You don't need an invitation to come wish someone mazel tov.
They say, the Gemara says about Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, the famous Tisha B'Av story, that there was a party that was made and the host said, go invite Kamsa, and by mistake invited Bar Kamsa, right? And then the whole thing happened, then he kicked him out of the wedding, and fast forward, Beis Mikdash gets destroyed. And the question was asked, it says, Kamsa Bar Kamsa, what did Kamsa do wrong? He didn't show up. What did he do wrong? And I heard a great answer years ago and always stuck in my head. That if your friend makes a wedding, you show up, whether invitation or no invitation. Had he been there, perhaps the host wouldn't have been so upset. So I think if you're making a wedding, I heard from Rabbi Krohn years ago, Rabbi Pesach Krohn, Shabbat Fu Shalema, he said that, when you're making a wedding, you have to know that you can't invite everyone that you may want to invite. And if you didn't get invited, you should realize that the guy can't invite, everyone has to realize both sides, because I don't want an invitation. You don't want me to come and I don't want your invitation. So let's everyone do everyone a favor. Save the postage, save the printing, don't invite me, and I'll wish you mazel tov and shul. I will still be friends.
And he gets a night back to do homework with his kids.
Exactly. And Baruch Hashem, there's so many simchas around that you could theoretically be at a wedding 5 nights a week. I'm not talking about going into Lakewood weddings or schlepping out of town wedding. I'm talking about just Brooklyn. I mean, we're here in Far Rockaway 5 towns. Between Far Rockaway 5 towns and Brooklyn, you could have, if you're in that age when your kids are all getting married, you could have, 3 nights a week a wedding, 4 nights a week a wedding sometimes. Now during the wedding season, for sure, you just can't do it.
And there's a decent percentage on the way sitting at a red light saying, why are we going to this? Do I have to go to this?
For sure.
How much of this do you communicate to your children, especially the ones getting married? Do you leave them out of the cost-making decisions, or do you incorporate them, show them, hey, here are my values?
You ask a lot of good questions, Ellie. I don't think that setting a budget for a wedding starts when the kid gets engaged. Okay, I don't think it's fair, again, in my own personal opinion, I'm not a Rav, I'm just my own personal opinion, I don't think it's fair to raise a child a certain way, with everything up there in spending wise, for whether it's bas mitzvah, sorry clappy, whether it's bar mitzvah, whether it's vacations, and then when it comes to the wedding, we got to stop right there. That's where now we have a new policy, and now we don't overspend. I don't think it's fair to your child to do that, unless there's some financial situation that changed in your life, which your kid will probably know about anyways. But if everything stayed the same and you managed to find the money for everything till now, waking up at the wedding is probably not the best idea, especially if they're expecting a certain thing and then you show up and said, I can't do it. I think it's important that it's not necessarily a conversation, but it's more of a lifestyle. And if you're teaching your kid what's important, what is important to us. And so by the time that boy or girl is 17, 18, 19, 20, starting shidduchim, they already know what's important to the family. They already know what they're going to get. Now, they may want a little more. They always do, because by the time it's their turn, there's a newer shaitel and a newer this and a newer that. But they also understand that, mommy and daddy are normal, healthy, and this is how we were raised. And I mean, I get everything I want this right now. I may get it in a year or 2 from now. So let's put it this way. Kids should never feel poor or feel that we don't have. They could know that we do our best we have, but certain words, certain things I find like a mindset. Obviously, a bank account, numbers don't lie. Someone has $0 in their bank and they're, tons of money in debt. That's the reality of things. But there's also a mindset. that you could raise your family, you could raise your kids in a very healthy way, that you may not have the extra money, but they're not lacking. We grew up, in Brooklyn. My father was a Rebbe. He worked for art school for 40 years. My mother was a teacher. We never had extra money, but we never felt poor. Somehow my mother made 6 chasanas, and we all got bikes, and we all got new suits, and we all went to camp, and I don't know, she figured it out.
Let's talk about the Varts, L'chaims.
Oh.
Have you had any thoughts over the years about that?
Just a few. Yes, definitely had thoughts about that. And by the way, I'm not like some zealot kanoi judging everyone. This is our personal way how we do things, and Ellie asked us to discuss what we do. We're not telling anyone what they should do. This is what we do, and this is what works for us. And if it works for you, great. If not, then do your thing. You do you. What works for us is to make Lchaim / Vart together. Okay, one thing. If you're going to do it separately, Lchaim is immediate family. There's no invitations. There's no posting anything. No, whoever knows about it knows about it. Whoever doesn't know about it doesn't know about it. We've also made our Varts in the house. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we had the room for it, and we made the Vart in the house. We were talking about this around the supper table one night also, or maybe the Shabbos table last week. What if someone doesn't have a big enough house? Now, I don't have a huge ostentatious house, but I can fit a few people in there. Well, some people have neighbors. We've made Varts for friends. Sometimes you can go to a shul or rent out a basement where you don't have to use some high-end caterer to cater it. There's ways around it.
Right.
So you can make a beautiful Vart and keep the costs down. For our last daughter's Vart who got married, so her Vart was a few months ago, she actually did the flowers herself. She's very creative. The flowers were absolutely stunning. Total cost, $139 at Trader Joe's. All in. The same flowers would have cost probably, I'm guessing, $2,000 from the florist. I love florists, and they do a great job, but it wasn't necessary. Now, had we gone to a fancy hall, not to bring in your $139 flowers to a fancy hall, but since you're doing the house, so you rent beautiful linen from a gemach, or you borrow from a gemach, you pay $5 to wash it and a little donation to the gemach. And you don't have to have every single $150 fancy cake, because no one cares about. Mm-hmm. Most of them end up going in the garbage, or, to cleaning help, or to your kids' yeshiva. So what for? But don't be cheap. Make a nice balabatish, what people want.
And you don't need a party planner.
You don't need a party planner. Hot food at Varts, I think the most we've had is like kugel or hors d'oeuvres. And again, not to sound cheap, but I'm not inviting you for dinner. I'm inviting you to come say Mazel Tov. So coming to my house, you're going to be happy. You're going to be minimal alcohol, if at all. No hot food, because what for? And that was it.
So there are plenty of Hasidim listening, and the culture in the more Hasidic world is different than what it's like in our world. When you look at me, by the way, am I in your world? I know you're wearing a white shirt, I'm wearing a gray shirt, but we're kind of similar, right?
Kind of similar.
They have their Wachnachts, right? And I only found this out recently. I was in Borough Park for a Wachnacht. That's not $1,000. And I'm not saying all Hasidim do that, but that could be a very, very expensive event. Whereas in our circles, you get a Pekala, that's when a boy is born, the night before the bris. And the total cost is like $38 with the balloons, right?
Right, but, okay, so in all fairness, first of all, I work in Borough Park, so I'm intimately involved with Hasidim all day. I run a supermarket.
What's the name?
Certo Market.
Where's it based?
39th, 13th Avenue. Please stop by and say hello.
You're available online?
Available online, certomarket.com, Elliot the best.
Okay. No, he does great work. Your blood is in that business. So right, but if you have comments, please go to 39th. And
in all fairness, we spend the money on a bris. Litvish spend money on a bris, and Hasidim spend money on a Wachnacht. Hasidic bris could be 12 people, including the male and the baby. Very often.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very small.
Toned down.
But the Wachnacht is out of control sometimes. Very often out of control. And again, I've spoken to many of them, and they don't understand it. I've spoken to guys, Hasidic co-workers or employees or customers, and they're like, I'm making a wedding, and it's going to cost me $130,000. I'm like, you're making it in a hole in a basement in Borough Park. How are you doing $130,000?
Yeah, I see it here. Someone wrote the average cost of a Hasidic wedding is $120,000.
Yeah.
But he said it's not for the actual wedding night. Part of that cost is the furniture, gifts, things like that.
Right. So that, again, it's all part of the same thing. It's like, it's like you go to yeshiva
Yeah.
And I hate to bring up tuition in this conversation because it's not a tuition conversation, but don't nickel and dime me with 15 other charges after my tuition. Give me a number, include the building fund, security, locker fee, every other fee involved. So if you tell me what it costs for a wedding, I listened to Rabbi Joey Haber because Mimi got me turned on to it, and he spoke last week about a typical wedding in the Syrian community. I'm only quoting Rabbi Haber. Don't
Someone
shoot
said
the
it was a
messenger.
great interview, and I'm going to link to it in the show notes.
It was absolutely fantastic. He had 2 shows, the issue and the solution. And he said that a typical girl in his community, when she starts dating, after the wedding is $150,000. If you're a family making a decent living, you're getting by, you're paying your bills, and you have 3 daughters back to back to back, what are you doing? So it's not only the wedding, it's the whole package. So maybe for Hasidim, the wedding itself is a Hasidic chasana and it goes faster and less things, but a full wedding, a full furniture package.
And those 3 nights you just described for the 3 beautiful simchas that they had, that could be someone's life savings.
If they had savings.
If they had, or they're now having to work an additional 10, 15 years to pay that off.
Right.
Because they didn't get the message that mayergold has.
Right. So they could be working, or they beg, borrowing, stealing. Now,
that's not literal. That's just a term. Okay, go ahead.
Halacha says that you have to support an ani according to their standards. If ani needs someone running in front of him with a horse and calling out his name, the halacha says you have to do that. So maybe if someone had a certain standard, but we get ourselves into that standard that we need, you need to have it, and you need, and then we're stuck that we all need it. So we created this monster. And we, meaning the entire From community, Baruch Hashem, we're fantastic. We grew and, we got, happy and fat, and here we are. And we have, everything is big and ostentatious and great and wonderful, but we can't afford it. So our whole life is one big,
You know what I love about the undertone of your message is that if you can afford it and you want it, kol hakavod, go for it. But if you can't afford it.
Right. I have a thought about that also. You want to hear my thought about that, Ellie?
Yeah, I don't have a choice. Go.
Well, you invited me. I heard also, I don't remember from who, and they were discussing, it was on a podcast, and they were discussing, what if someone is very wealthy? Hashem blessed him with money, and he has a lot of money, and they were talking about going on vacations. Okay, is he allowed to go to the Swiss Alps during Yeshiva week? Or should he say, no, because my friends can't afford the Swiss Alps, I'm not going to go either? And it was actually a Shaila, and it was like a Paislik, and he said, no, you should go to the Swiss Alps, with one caveat.
Don't post it on Instagram.
If you were not on the trip, you don't get pictures. Only share pictures with people on that trip. So
I think Rabbi Weider from YU said that.
Okay, then there you go.
I mean,
yeah, it's very possible. I don't remember who it was. Yeah. Again, and it's the mindset that you don't have to live in. If Hashem gave you a bracha of parnasa, then use it. Hashem gave it you for a reason. Use it correctly and use it as ask your shilas and do what you're supposed to do with your money and whatever it is.
Give your tzedakah.
But keep in mind that you have an achrayus to other people. The flip side about that is that other people have the same achrayus. So if Hashem gave you a different bracha, and your bracha is not necessarily parnasa in your eyes, then you have to realize that Hashem doesn't want you making that $250,000 chasna. If he wanted you to make it, he'd give you the money. But he doesn't want you to make it. That's why he didn't give you the money. So you have to sort of like get the message from God that, live within your means if you can. And obviously there's a social pressure, but again, it's the social pressure of each person thinking that the other person really has when they also don't have it. So if all guys got together, if 10 guys got together and said, hey guys, we're all making chasanas now. Let's be real. None of us could afford a fancy wedding. Let's just make up a normal wedding and we'll all walk away from there without being broke. And everyone agreed to do it. It'll be great, but we can't get that to happen.
When I got married, my in-laws told my wife and I, we can make the wedding in a hall that is great, but maybe not as nice as Eden Palace. And we'll give you the difference if you make it in that hall. I'm like, no way. A lot of my friends got married in Eden Palace. Maybe one friend got married in that other hall. I'm not doing that. I'm going to do it in Eden Palace. Had I taken that money and invested it, I'd be in a much better place right now. So there is a pressure from the kid's standpoint to not be different than their friends that I think the parents have that same pressure not to be different from their friends. When someone's making a wedding, who are they making the wedding for? The children, themselves? I mean, they're the ones paying for it.
The problem with that is that you're talking about mature parents, hopefully mature, that are at a certain stage of their life that they're marrying off a child, and they're speaking to their future child, not their current child. Because if that kid is 21 years old or 20 or whatever, and all their friends are having a certain type of wedding, that's all they know about. So it's very difficult when you're 50 years old, talk to your 20-year-old child and saying, I'm telling you, it's a smarter idea. Take this $20,000, put it somewhere, and in a couple of years, you'll have a down payment for a house. It's very difficult for 20-year-old chassan and kala to understand that when 50-year-old parent realizes it of course, that makes the most sense at all.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't think in those terms. But again, I think I go back to what I said originally, that it's part of a general mindset. If the general mindset is that we're going to do what makes sense and not going to go above our means and not going to just, now again, if you need to, want to, can, no one says you shouldn't do it. Keeping in mind, now, here's also part of the challenge of our world, and again, I've spoken to a few people about this before we came on, just to hear their take on it, that if someone is of a certain, let's say, he got the bracha of wealth and he's very, very wealthy, and he makes a toned down chasana, no one says, oh, he's not wealthy. Everyone says, oh, it's so nice. He has nothing to prove to anybody. If he makes a very expensive wedding, no one says anything either, because that's what he's doing. He's doing according to what he does. And the flip side is the exact opposite. The people that are on the very low end of the financial totem pole, again, if they make a very basic wedding, then people realize, good, they're living within their means. It's the people in the middle that sort of have a lost identity, where they don't know where they didn't come to grips with where they're up to in life. And they think that they're holding a certain point financially, and they're really not. Maybe they didn't think about it so much. They are really stuck because they don't want to make a quote unquote Takana chasana, because then their high roller friends are going to say, what kind of wedding is this? Or at least they'll think they'll say that.
Why do they care though?
Because the human psychology is people care. That's human psychology. Mm-hmm. But yet when people realize that they shouldn't care. Do what you have to do. People respect you for who you are and not for what you're giving them. And it's beautiful,
Do you feel like you made a Takana wedding? Because we didn't even use that word.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Takana wedding in that there are Takanos, meaning there are rules and regulations how to run the wedding. You didn't feel it at all.
Right. Which I think people have this negative stigma when they think of Takana. It really just means affordable and being able to be wealthy down the line without digging yourself into a hole.
Takana also has a certain connotation, like rules, regulations. People don't like rules, regulations.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like the rules are here to help you. Like it's like a red light or a stop sign. It's a Takana, but it's there to help you not to get in an accident. So it's a Takana that says, make your wedding, go home, have a beautiful simcha, enjoy the Shabbat brachas, and don't be worried about your credit card debt, because everything went on a credit card, or you borrowed money, you have to pay it now, or you refinanced your house, or you do whatever you had to do, but because you didn't. And your kids are just as happy. And this, not only weddings, Ellie, it ties into everything till the wedding, from the wedding, I don't know, Shabbat brachas outfits, suits, flowers, does the chassan need 7 new suits because she's having 7 nights of Shabbat brachas, 6, and does the colony need 7 new dresses? Maybe they do, But,
I want to run through some points that viewers reached out with when I said I was doing an episode on simchos. So things that I've never made a wedding, so it's interesting. There's something called a bedecken wall. Are you familiar with this? They could be $10,000 for a stupid wall of flowers. Okay, so I never heard the term bedecken wall, but I guess it's the wall behind. How would you describe a bedecken to somebody? Okay, so bedecken is when so by Orthodox wedding, you have the pre-ceremony where the groom is sitting in one room with his friends and family, and his male friends and male family, and the bride is in a different room with all the females and her friends and families of the female side. And at some point, the groom comes in and throws a veil on over the bride's face, and that's and because they're not supposed to see each other till the wedding, and it's a lot of mystical reasons and other religious reasons why they do that, and that's called the bedecken. And usually with the bride is sitting in like a fancy chair, like maybe some kind of fancy couch, and next to her on one side is her mother-in-law, on one side is her mother, and the grandmothers and aunts and closest friends are all behind her cheering on. I'm guessing the bedecken wall is the wall that ends up in all the pictures behind the kala. They should just put up a screen and have a picture of flowers. So somehow I have 5 weddings that we made, right? So we have, and I don't remember ever hearing the word bedecken wall. So I guess it could be done without it. But it makes sense what it is. Now, I do remember being at a wedding when I noticed that the florist team came in. The team came in to dismantle the bedecken wall, now that I know what it's called. And I'm thinking to myself, gee, what do orchids cost a piece? And what do calla lilies cost a piece? And I'm not a botanist. I just know certain flowers. And I'm like, that wall was thousands of dollars that wall cost. And no one's going to ever remember it. No one ever saw it.
No one ever saw it. No one even noticed it was there. And if, again, it goes back to the original point we said, Ellie, if they're coming in discussing the flowers, then they're not paying attention to the kala.
Mm-hmm.
If it's about the chas and the kala, and I think that's another point that I have to mention, okay? And that it's the chas and the kala's wedding. It's their most important night of their life. Let's keep it about them. It's not about the parents. It's really not about not the parents, not the grandparents, not the siblings. It's not about them. Not about showing off to your business associates or your friends or impressing anybody. About simchas chas and kala. So once you focus, that's what it is. Then that's what it is.
So if it's about them, I have a question. I'll make believe I'm your daughter in this scenario. Why has it become a normal thing?
My daughter doesn't have a beard.
Oh, sorry. It's Lag BaOmer today. We've never done an episode on Lag BaOmer, but we're doing it right before. This is Erev Shabbos, a few hours to Shabbos, but we're doing it. Why has it become a normal thing to spend $3,000 on the kala's makeup? They charge $2,000 just for the kala. People will write in. Every makeup artist is going to write in. I don't charge that. It's $1,500. $3,000 is extreme. I'm just telling you what someone wrote, and it could be on the higher side. They charge $2,000 just for the kala, and then it could be up to $1,500 for each of the other family members. And then someone wrote that they'll charge you extra. You spend $300, Mayor's wife says. They charge extra not to be posted. If you don't want to be posted to Instagram to show their work, you have to pay more.
Again, so it's everything could go as far as you want it to go. There are some kalas that do the makeup themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Some people go to a beauty parlor, there's such a thing still, to a makeup place on the way into the wedding, and some people bring the makeup artist there. I guess most people do that, which just makes more sense. And then the makeup artist could come and do it and make the kala's face beautiful and then move on, or stick around for the entire wedding. And that's where your costs are going to go. And again, it's what is the important thing over here? Yes, we want the kala to be beautiful. Yes, the kala's mother and the mother-in-law and all everyone should be beautiful, and they are beautiful. But if they realize that it's just an unnecessary thing, do you need to have maybe you do, but if you have to think, do you need to have a makeup artist that comes to the hall and does every single face of every single female member of the wedding party?
And stays the entire wedding
and stays the whole wedding, plus a hair person that does the kala's hair before and after the chuppah and for the second dance, and a wedding dresser.
They'll say, Mayor, you don't have hair. You don't understand.
Correct. I'll be the first to admit I don't understand, but I do.
You're not a woman. This is very important to them.
Correct. But I do have a house with 6 daughters and a bunch of daughters-in-law and a wife. And my house is really, it's a female house. I'm like an av bias in a girls' seminary.
Mm-hmm.
So I know all about these things, but you need a wedding dresser to spend the entire, maybe you do, but think about it. If you can't afford the wedding, you probably don't need to spend $2,000 on a wedding dresser who basically is the gopher to run around all night, do anything that the kala or the kala's mother or mother may need done, which is great to have. It's like a personal valet all night, but if you can't afford the wedding, you don't need a personal valet to carry your extra bobby pins.
Here's a pet peeve of mine, especially in 2025, invitations and stationery.
Oh.
The amount of money spent on the printing, the design, the postage, the thank you notes. You can send a text message with a link that it's more convenient. That, there's this website called adevent.com, I think. You click it, it goes straight in. Who doesn't have that? Okay, some people are older, you can send to the 30 people that you think will not appreciate a text message.
So we're guilty as charged, and we did send out invitations, each one of our weddings. Part of the reason why we did it is because
you get money on the thank you notes.
sometimes, not always. Thank you very much. No, I don't know. I don't open them, so I don't know. But the real reason is because a lot of our circle is not in really looking at their email so much. And that I'm guessing as time goes on, next generation of making weddings, Ellie, when you make your first class, you will do you do a digital invitation. You're not going to spend the money. One thing we will do is a very basic invitation. So it's not like extra thick cardboard. It's not. If the stamp costs more than the invitation, you spend too much money on the invitation. We're not doing gold embossed letters. It all ends up in the same exact garbage can. If you're lucky, it's on your refrigerator till the wedding, or till you forgot, or till your friend forgot to come to your wedding. If you're not lucky, or if you're just a normal friend, it goes in the garbage can. You write it down somewhere and make a note in your Google Calendar, and it goes right in the garbage can.
You think people are taking out loans and going into debt for this?
For the invitation pot? No.
For just as we talk about more and more stuff, I'm just thinking in my head, oh, that's $2,000, that's $2,500, that's another $8,000, and you just made a wedding for 20-something thousand. Obviously, it may not include does that include the invitations also?
That's the one thing that didn't include. No.
Right.
or the bench shirts, which is another thing that
Right. But those are relatively minimal relative to
right. But
$10,000
the problem with relative is that those relatives keep adding up. So it's $200 here, $200 there, and then it's $10,000 more than you intended to spend. I don't know. I don't ask people if they're taking out loans, and I hope that people are not taking out loans. And I don't know what people earn, but I know people who live a certain lifestyle, and I know what their jobs are. And you figure that people that would have that type of job usually earn that type of living, and how are they making a way? I don't ask it. It's not my business. I don't think about it, and they can do whatever they want, and God bless them if they could afford it. Maybe their parents, in-laws, they won the lottery secretly. I don't know, but if they're taking out loans and borrowing just to that people should think that they have money or that people should be impressed, I'm sorry, I feel bad.
Spring is here, and so is the perfect time to refresh your wardrobe with Twillory. If you're tired of stiff, sweaty, uncomfortable dress shirts, you're not alone. Twillory's performance shirts are breathable, stretchy, and made to move with you. So whether you're at the office, at shul, or chasing kids around a Sunday barbecue that you may or may not want to be at, those shirts are awesome. They've got polos, ear suits, pants. By the way, their ear suits are perfect for those hot summer days. They have dress shirts, which we spoke about. They're super soft, and they despise the very idea of wrinkles are despised by these shirts. So when you think of Twillory, think comfortable enough to lounge in, but sharp enough to wear to a meeting, even on Zoom. It's the best of both worlds. I was just in their new store in Cedarhurst in Long Island, and I was surprised because they had new offerings that they didn't even tell me about, which I kind of liked. I'm surprised and excited every time I walk in there. The team at Twillory doesn't stop pumping out quality and innovative menswear. I wrote that myself. But enough about me. Use code KM20 at twillory.com/koshermoney and you'll get 20% off. I think it's for first-time customers. If not, they have a deal I see now. They have deals all the time. You look good, you feel good, it's light on the pocket. If you don't need new clothing, don't do it. But if you're looking for new clothing, that's where Twillory delivers. Psh, your wardrobe just got an upgrade. Colel Chabad is proud to serve all needy people in Israel, but one group holds a special place in their hearts: Holocaust survivors. Colel Chabad provides hot, fresh, nutritious meals every day and hand delivers them to each of these cherished individuals in need. Additionally, Colel Chabad's volunteers visit these heroes, these homebound heroes. They're stuck at home, and they go regularly. This past Pesach, they partnered with Claims Conference to get this, give $100 food cards to 20,930 Holocaust survivors. Yes, over 20,000 survivors celebrated Pesach with dignity and comfort because of you, the donors. The youngest survivors remaining are in their 80s, and approximately 50 survivors pass away each day. We have to care for every survivor who remains, and that's where you come in. Please consider making a $100 donation to help a Holocaust survivor. It's an incredible mitzvah, good deed, and is one of the best ways you can honor those who lived through atrocity and lost practically everything. The link is in the show notes, kolchabad.org/koshermoney. Please donate while you continue to listen to this episode. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. I'm just going to read some comments. You don't have to comment on each one, but these are things that caught my eye. Someone writes, the chassan kala gifts and expectations have gone out of control. You spoke about that.
Oh, by the way, by Hasidim, it's much worse.
Why?
Much, much worse, because they have so many more gifts that they give. So, and I literally, we had dinner 2 nights ago. A new chassan and kala came over. Ephraim and Gitti is sitting there. And I said, guys, imagine, I said to my daughter Gitti, I said, imagine you guys got married. And before the chasana, Ephraim has a shas, a watch, an esrog box, a menorah, a ka'ara, a kittel, 2 talis bags, ataras, a becher. I said, his first birthday is coming up that you guys are married together. What are you buying for his birthday present? What are you doing? And, and also, by the way, you're not showing up to a $200,000 chasana with $99 cufflinks in the chassan shirt. So just think about that for a second.
You're scaring a lot of people.
Everyone should get married, by the way.
Chassanim requesting Rolex watches and the shver, the father-in-law, not having the courage to say no. They vent that they can't do it, but they don't want to risk the shidduch.
Baruch Hashem was never in that situation, but I have a hard time understanding that, because if the mechutanim understand each other, and that means that they understand each other's financial bracket, and if their son or daughter is raised that they have to have certain things, that may not be the best shidduch, and that should have come out sometime in the dating process,
Someone made an excellent point, and this is something I was thinking without even realizing. And it could be just more social pressure, but he writes, the prospect of making weddings with certain standards so you don't make a cheap name for yourself for future shidduchim terrifies me.
It's funny because, I don't know if I should say this or not, but I'll say it. You can always edit it.
Or not.
When we told our kids that we're doing this, so we have a daughter who's going to start shidduchim very soon. Sippy Gold, wonderful girl.
Link to the resume in the show notes.
Swipe up for the resume. So she said, Todd, why are you doing this? I said, because I want your future mechutanim to know exactly what they're getting into before they start.
Love it.
Just the opposite. Let them know this is where we're holding. It's not about being cheap. It's a mindset. Baruch Hashem, listen, I make a parnasa, Baruch Hashem, we have food on our table, we pay our bills, Baruch Hashem, more or less. And if I were to sit down and thought about it, yeah, we probably could have made a wedding that cost more than $23,000. But we chose not to because there's no reason for it.
Someone writes, my daughter is a Colel Baruch Hashem. Mazel tov. I'm shocked by how much the standard basic gift exchange list for chas and kala has grown since I got married. It's to the point where if everybody has to give an engagement ring, an engagement bracelet, a watch, a sitter, machsarim, gigantic bouquet of flowers at the vart, ... Is a gift special if you know that the other side has a list that they have to check off?
Also, a gift coming from the kala's parents to the chassan is not very meaningful at all.
Right.
I think that's what you mean. Also, it's just there's nothing there. But if they're married 2 years or 3, I'm not that old, but I got my ka'ara, and we must have been married over 20 years.
Someone writes, please let me know why these 20-year-old pishers who marry, who most are being supported and haven't accomplished anything significant in their lives, yet need to walk around with $20,000 chassan watches and a $5,000 tennis bracelet and diamond necklaces.
Correct. So if you're buying your kala $5,000 tennis bracelet, and now you reach your 10-year anniversary, some milestone, or she graduated nursing school, or you graduate, whatever, and you want to get her a gift, what are you getting for her?
Right. Last one on this. The saddest or funniest thing is that I've asked a few different chassanim if they specifically want Rolexes. This is someone who handles shidduchim. Or if they're open to something else like Cartiers or Breitlings, they respond that they heard Rolexes have the best resale value. So if they ever need cash, they can just sell their watch. Meanwhile, their parents are crying that they can't really afford to buy the watch, but they're scared to ruin the shidduch.
I have a good idea for those chassanim. Tell their parents, put the cash away, invest the cash, and they'll have the cash when they need it.
Oh my goodness, there's so much nuance. I mean, I'll do episodes, even investing episodes don't have this much nuance. There's so many moving parts.
It gets back to everyone has to take a break. Everyone take a break for 5 minutes and think, what are we doing?
Right.
Is any of this normal over here? Does anyone know if they're wearing a CZ or a lab-grown diamond or a diamond that costs $10,000 and nobody could afford? Most people don't know the difference.
People say that a lot of the pressure these days is because of social media. People see what other people are doing.
Correct.
And that just fuels the fire.
Right. I would guess that's all, but like anything, don't look at the next. I mean, again, unfortunately, that's the generation we live in, that people look and they assume that everyone else has, and everyone else is great. Remember, social media only tells you a tiny part of the story.
Right. That's true.
Only part that they want you to see.
You don't know how much debt. By the way, on the flower side, there are many fake flower options you can go with. But more than that, if you're using real flowers, find out who's making a simcha that night and go in together and say to the florist, hey, I need these flowers to last 2 nights, or, have some sort of swap. A florist asked me to share this. He said that there was a local vendor. He was the local vendor where he wasn't paid by the party planner because something on one of the prop items, like a sweatshirt, some of the merch, wasn't exactly to their liking. So they held the payment for everything, so all the vendors couldn't get paid. Meaning,
right?
I told him I would say that.
I know this is a pet peeve of yours, Ellie.
Yes.
Yes, you made a beautiful wedding, and everyone says ooh and ah, and at the end of the day, the florist has to pay his workers, and he didn't get paid yet.
Right.
And there's no reason for it. And by the way, I did see recently on some chats, maybe your chats or other chats, that there are a lot of flower gemachs going around.
Yeah.
And you're making a simcha. Let's let the person know what type of flowers you're using. Maybe someone else could use them. Going back to our simcha, our Shabbat brachas flowers, $119 from Trader Joe's. My other daughter made them, and we used them at 3 other Shabbat brachas.
Eli
beautiful.
Fried, I'm going to put a couple of links to practical ideas he shared. He wrote, "It's a terrible embarrassment to our community that the standard cost for making a wedding has reached or exceeded the average income of the American family per year. Multiply that by the typical family with numerous children. It's unsustainable." Here, someone wrote, "Fancy desserts at weddings are crazy. No one is hungry, barely anyone sticks around, and it all goes into the garbage." Someone said the best thing are those little ices.
Right.
Do that and you're done. Someone said the music's too loud. I don't think he realized I was
But
talking
then
about
you have to have
but they are.
earplugs. That's more cost.
Oh yeah, but
Then
then
you have to put out earplugs. Then
and you
you're
have to
paying
put a
for
logo on the ear.
right.
on the
So you're
earplugs.
hiring 5 musicians to play loud music to give out earplugs so you can't hear the music. Something's wrong with this picture.
Someone wrote, "Why does everyone need a new hat for a bar mitzvah wedding? The father of the Colel can go get his hat steamed." It's true. You
It's
made a
true.
wedding a year and a half ago.
It's true.
Someone wrote, "What's with the silly sweatshirts, mother of Colel when they're getting dressed, and the classic father of the Colel scan for payment shirt?" It's cute
It
and all
never
that.
ends.
What? It never ends.
It never ends.
Someone then also said for the post-wedding expenses, meaning sustaining children for extended periods of time, sending them off to Israel to play house. Someone
Again,
wrote,
that's a whole nother conversation. And again, but it comes into the same topic. If there's nothing wrong with telling your children you want to learn in Colel, for X amount of years or forever. That's fantastic. I'm happy to help where I can. But what's your plan A?
I want to hear a great point. Someone wrote, "It's crazy to me and quite frustrating how the day of my wedding, supposedly the holiest day of my life, as we're taught, I spent hours and hours taking pictures as opposed to davening and trying to really connect to the day. That followed by being rushed and commanded around by the person in charge of the hall and wedding time management. I think the way weddings are today are very produced like a big play."
100%. Now, again, keep in mind, it has to be that way in order for it to run because you're making such a huge event. It has to run on schedule and everything else. So there's no choice.
There was a Muncie event recently. I don't know if you saw this.
Right.
Hundreds and hundreds of people showed up. They wrote, "Representatives of all the communities gathered to discuss how to address those who will participate in the Matzah Tov initiative. They had philanthropists, community leaders, collectively committed to establishing and funding new halls for families," which I think they want to do in West Hempstead out here.
Right. I've heard about that.
To make weddings more affordable. They also pledged to support necessary businesses that will help lower the outrageous cost. And CBN, he writes, "That's the way it's done. Good for them to getting it together and time to tie up all those loose ends." Because we're just donating money for those to keep up when they can keep costs down.
Right. I think one of the challenges we have in our communities is that there's no central authority that makes decisions. There's no Sanhedrin that tells us what to do.
Unlike in a
Hasidic community,
right?
If you're part of a certain kehillah, I know Bubov has, in Borough Park, a hall where if you're part of that kehillah, you can make a chasna at a certain price, and there's actually a gemach that can help lend you the money, cover the cost, so you don't go into hak, and it's very sustainable for your small community. Question is, what does everyone else do? If you're not part of that type of community, and there's no central figure telling you what to do, and Takana, and to make Takanas, I know years ago the Gedolim got together, and trust me, I'm not a Gadol, and I don't have an opinion. I'm just saying what happened. And they said we're gonna make certain type of weddings, and it didn't really last because it has to come from each person individually. Right. It can't come as a that type of effort.
Eli Fried shared the Gemara in Ma'id Katan, where Rabbi Gamliel had a very simple funeral because they kept getting very extravagant, and he said, "I'm gonna do simple." So setting a tone. Someone had a few ideas. In the book All for the Boss, she discussed her wedding and how they went for pictures before the wedding. Where did we get the minhag? I guess ask your rabbi, of not seeing each other that day. It would be more convenient and perhaps cheaper to do it. Don't be busy with a photographer in the hall and all that. People go to Israel for bar mitzvahs. They say it's just cheaper. Why should I rent out a hall? And
again, it's cheaper than what? It's cheaper than renting out a hall for your 500 closest friends. It's not cheaper than having your family over for Shabbos or Malav Malka.
Someone said, "I save a lot of money by hiring up-and-coming people, musicians, cameramen, DJs." Someone said a list of singers that are phenomenal, and they say they're going to be huge one day for the more affluent crowd.
Right.
You can hire them. Get them now.
100%.
Also, shopping around. We think that, like you said, right? One hall gives you a quote. You shop around. You could find things for cheaper, even a musician.
I think part of the challenge with that is that when a chassan and kala get engaged, you want to get a date pretty soon. Unless you're Hasidish and you have 9 months to a year to get married. So you're sort of limiting yourself where you're going to go. You just grab the hall without making a lot of phone calls, a lot of inquiries.
On the gown side, there are gemachs that have beautiful gowns. You don't have to purchase I see here people are selling or buying $5,000 to $8,000 gowns. Is that what they cost potentially? Like,
Mm, yeah.
and there's a beautiful gown gemach the Ganaks have in Lawrence. Why someone writes, why pay good money when you don't need to?
Right. So again, kudos to Mimi and our girls. All the gowns at the wedding were gemach gowns, and they all look beautiful. And yeah, you could do it.
You can find bands that
I mean,
probably don't cost.
there's no gemach suit. There's no suit gemachs for the father of the bride. But if there was, I
That's
might
why
have gotten
Twillory
one.
exists. Although Twillory, they're more comfortable. I think they're more for.
Jody, you have a lot of work to do on this.
No. This keep in Jody. Jody's our editor. They're more comfortable. I don't know necessarily that they're wedding
Dressy enough.
style, right? They're more office type dress.
So if you make a small wedding in an office, you can wear a Twillory suit.
Someone wrote about the decor gemach. I guess
Excuse
the decor. So
Decor.
decor, tablecloths, glassware, centerpieces. You don't have to buy. There's so many ideas. Maybe towards the end, I'll share a bunch more. But Mayor, I can't thank you enough. This was phenomenal.
It's our pleasure. I try to have one
Yeah.
thing. I'm not sure. I think I mentioned it before, but I think it bears mentioning again, and that I think this conversation it should be geared primarily to people like yourself, Ellie, like that age group who has not yet made weddings.
Mhm.
Start thinking about it now, because if you already made your weddings or your kids are already starting shidduchim and you want to change your whole philosophy on money, trust me, I'm not the biggest money guru, and I'm maybe the worst financial. I call Mimi always the financial CEO or the financial minister, the finance minister in the
Financial
house.
CEO is CFO.
Right.
He works in bar park.
Mimi's the finance minister of the house because I'm terrible at those things. But you need to start thinking about those things now. So don't make your kid a $25,000 bar mitzvah and get to the wedding and say, I can't spend $100,000, but
Right.
you did already.
Right.
And don't make a $35,000 bas mitzvah and then say, I can't make the wedding. You need to start the process now, and it's a mindset, and get into that mindset. And Mitzvah Shem should only make a lot of simchas.
Amen. One of my biggest nachas reports is when somebody in their 40s, 50s says, I love that episode. I sent it to my teenage kid. I sent it to my 22-year-old, because they're saying what you're saying. It might be too late for me. I might not be able to fix the mistakes I've made, which many times it is fixable. You could start investing at the age of 45, 55, 65. But they're saying, hey, this is something that I maybe didn't teach you, or that the next generation is catching on.
They need to know
miss it. Right.
This information over here are things that you need to know and think about.
Wonderful. We probably could do also a whole grocery episode, which maybe we'll have to do around too. No?
Come back next week.
We'll come
What
back,
are
yeah.
we doing next Friday?
Erev Shabbos, right? We'll make this a minute. Erev Shabbos with Mayor. But this was gold. So
Okay.
thank you, Mayor Gold.
Thank you.
That was an amazing episode, but I want to share some more tips, thoughts with you. There were just way too many to go through on an Erev Shabbos. Number one, Eli Fried has a 5-step approach to managing the costs of a simcha. He talks about how to save up when, you first get married, first child, $100 a month, and how it compounds over 20 years at 60 grand. Now, even if someone can't put away $100 a month, just $10 a month, $1, these things add up. Okay. Some other stuff. Someone writes in, I'm not familiar with all the details, but there's a program called Shiftei Yisrael in Babov where people become a member. When the kid gets married, they will offer an interest-free loan. It's amazing. Someone writes, there are a number of charities that will help fund setting up the home. Most notable are Tiferes Devor Lakala and Chazdei Chasha. Their income requirements for eligibility are very liberal. Even if you choose not to take tzedakah, many are willing to provide provisions at cost. It's amazing. Eli Fried also discusses trimming the guest list. Before we get to more tips, I want to congratulate Rivka S.A. She won a $100 Amazon gift card for just commenting on the previous YouTube video. Comment on the video in something smart and you'll be entered. Don't write the word something smart, you clever person. Just comment something that adds value and you'll be entered for the chance to win a 100. You know what? Let's make it a $150 Amazon gift card this time. Okay? Let's remember. And if you win, reach out. Rivka, reach out on livinglchaim.com. Someone writes, if two people are old enough to get married and have children, they're old enough to save up and buy a couch. Agreed. Make it small, make it normal, simple, and that's it. You don't need all of that at your wedding. A lot of good thoughts from people. Someone writes, I wish a simcha would stay a simcha without the burden of debt following. That could be in your control. Play it smart. Someone writes, would love smaller, more intimate, real close friends type of weddings for my children. Yeah, I don't think the COVID style is realistic, but instead of a 400-person wedding, what does a 170-person wedding look like, and what are the cost difference? Someone sent in a personal observation. He writes, a wealthy business person may need to have a more lavish simcha to invite his many business associates and keep his business reputation intact. I don't know about that, but some family members may have an existential need for some particular aspect, but for others, these expenses may be totally unnecessary. Someone writes, I was leaning to take the much better deal on a haul when I realized that I don't need the nicer option, and even at less than 10%, it amounted to a $900 difference. I spend a long time working to earn or save $900, and it simply doesn't make sense to spend that extra money. By the way, on CBN, a couple of days before this episode aired, he shared a story from an Art Scroll book, I believe, Chapter 7, Marriage and a New Life. It's a story about Reb Aaron Leib Steinman. And in the book, it says, in much of today's Jewish world, newlyweds take for granted that they will spend the week after their wedding running from one Sheva Brachas Suda to the next, being wined and dined, fussed over, and blessed. For the Steinmans, however, the only Sheva Brachas they had was at the wedding itself. They didn't have Sheva Brachas on any other night or even on the Shabbos after the wedding. An aversion to wasting money, or as Rabbi Aaron Leib would say, bizbuz kesef, dictated that the refugees live frugally during wartime, especially if they were financially reliant on others. When their children got married years later in Eretz Yisrael, the Steinmans made one modest and inexpensive Sheva Brachas for each couple. Later, yet, when asked to speak at his grandchildren's Sheva Brachas, Reb Aaron Leib always declined. He jokingly said that since he didn't have Sheva Brachas himself, he didn't delve into Sheva Brachas Torah, and that his marriage turned out fine despite not having Sheva Brachas. So CBN writes, we found the above very interesting. And he says, as a side note, when they posted about it last week, they had tons of newly married couples message them stating that they felt it wasn't necessary and that it was not so enjoyable for them, especially the first Sheva Brachas on the first night after the Chasna. Additionally, parents of the new couples were very strong that it was very challenging to have Sheva Brachas every night. Yes, they enjoyed the simcha, but both from saving family members and grandparents, the unnecessary expense of making and paying for the Sheva Brachas, and the physical toll of having one every night, they were in favor of limiting or eliminating. Most of the responses we got were in favor of having only one Sheva Brachas during the week and then Shabbos Sheva Brachas. This is an opinion of CBN and apparently of many. So do with that what you will. Not looking to decrease simcha. We should only have simchos. But if it's financially challenging, you can rely on Reb Aaron Leib Steinman. Apparently, speak to your own Rav. Guys, you are inspiring me. You should all be on Inspiration for the Nation. Thank you for listening. I'm sure you have what you disagree with, agree with. You can write in. I will try to get Mayor's contact info. If someone has a thought, we'll put his contact info. People send me thoughts. I was probably a little bit more opinionated in this episode than I generally am on other episodes, but you get me just how I am. Thank you to our sponsors, Twillory. I'm wearing their shirts, their pants, their socks. I think they might be coming out with belts. Check them out, okay? Check them out, twillory.com/koshermoney. Use the code KM20. You'll get 20% off your order. Exclusions apply. They now have a store in Cedarhurst, which you got to check out. Just take a look, see what they offer. You don't have to buy anything. Just look and see if there's something that speaks to you. Super comfortable, durable, the whole shebang. They have so many different types of clothing. They have blazers, they have suits, pants, socks, all types of shirts, polo shirts. They have the ear suit, especially with the warmer months. Thank you to our friends at Colel Chabad. They are fantastic. They're doing amazing work in Israel. I'm telling you, you don't even realize how many tens of thousands of people are being fed. Support them, kolalchabad.org/koshermoney. Thank you to Yehudis and the team at Kesem Media. They can work magic for you. We'll put the website link in the show notes. Check them out. There's no reason your marketing and advertising is not in their hands. And thank you to our friends at BitBean. We're heading out to their offices in June. I'm super excited about that, to see everything up close and personal, what they're doing with software. They're helping companies make more money, decrease payroll because you're doing things inefficiently. There is so much software can do. Check them out. Link is in the show notes, bitbean.com. Love the name. Thank you to our friends at Living Smarter Jewish. If you need a financial advisor, a coach, somebody for free to help you budget, manage debt, who knows? There's so many different things someone needs help with as it relates to money. You're not alone. Reach out to them, livingsmarterjewish.org. They just had a fantastic event in Lchaim, Berlin. If you think that your yeshiva or school can benefit from it, you have married couples, older teenagers, don't be afraid to reach out. Maybe they can make an event with you and you can help save thousands and thousands of families over the course of the next 102 years and beyond. Thank you to everyone who listened. Thank you, Jody, who edited this episode and did a fantastic job. Thank you to Yaakov and the entire team at Living Lchaim who make episodes like this possible. If you have a guest suggestion, livinglchaim.com. If you have a lot of money and you want to sponsor an episode, L'zecher Nishma, somebody, Li Ilu Nishma, S'chus for Refuah Shalema. Yaakov's doing fantastic work. We're helping a lot of people. Don't be afraid to reach out, livinglchaim.com. Until next time, keep your money kosher. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Kosher Money, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
That was Chanoch Langer, and he did a perfect job in the outro. Give me a high five.
Living Lchaim.